Come to the Big Shtick, my conversation with Teddy Roosevelt. This is John Williams. The show is Saturday, August 12th at the College of DuPage. Look, it's cheaper than Hamilton. He wasn't even a president. Get your tickets now at WGNradio.com/events or call 630-942-4000. Rae Kaplan is in our studio. She's the owner of Kaplan Law Firm here in Chicago, downtown. Rae, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming into our studio.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you work on cases like this, too. You represent the students, right?
Yes, we do.
Stay closer to the microphone if you can.
Sure.
So tell me a little bit about an average case or what you're thinking about this story. You've heard about this, huh?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, we posted it on our Facebook page and our Instagram account, and I actually attended a conference last summer in Washington, D.C., where the focus of the conference was how to defend cases brought by National Collegiate Trust.
So is there something unfair or unreasonable about the loans that they're giving to these students?
I would say simply what's unfair is their inability to document that this particular borrower owes this particular amount and on this particular loan.
Okay, so if they had been better about the paperwork, you wouldn't be there.
Exactly.
Really? So this is more a technical problem than an ethical one about should you be lending money at high rates to people who you know might have trouble paying it off. I mean, none of us likes that scenario. It happens, but that's not your business here. Your business is, wait a minute, if you can't prove ownership of the loan, then you don't own the loan.
Exactly. And we're not trying to just get them off on a technicality, as it were. It's more a question of if they can't prove that this loan is owed by this particular student, because possibly the loans were consolidated at an earlier point, and so when they lose the chain of title and they lose the documents and they're unable to prove and show the chain of title,
right,
they're unable to show that this particular student owes this much, and there are actual real questions about the amounts that are owed as well.
Well, okay, that's fair enough, and I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. What if the student actually had paid it off, and the lender simply doesn't have the paperwork to demonstrate that? We can't ask somebody to pay it twice.
Exactly.
But I think what's more the case is we're asking somebody to not pay it at all. The more often what this will result in is people not paying on loans that they took out.
This is true. That does occur. It is occurring.
That's more often the case. In fact, wasn't it Hillary Clinton and others have said that if you pay on a federal student loan for 10 years straight without missing a payment, whatever's owed at the end of that will be forgiven.
That's absolutely true. That's public service loan forgiveness. But that's if you work in the public sector.
Okay, fair enough. But I'm rather startled by that. I guess maybe because we paid our loans. I mean,
right.
I wish I had that break. I didn't get that break. Do you know what I mean?
I do. It seems unfair, but the situation now seems to be that the Department of Education and the government is happy if you, as a student, are making consistent payments, even if they're income-based lower payments, then they don't have to hire collection attorneys, and it actually saves the government money.
Okay, fine. And do you support that? Do you think that's a good way for us to go?
The public service loan forgiveness option?
For instance, yeah.
It really depends on the situation. I think that in many cases, it is the right thing to do. Honestly, most of the debt does get paid back. It's just possibly the interest and finance charges that are being forgiven.
We'll talk about that. What are the interest rates that these loans are going out at then?
Mostly 4.5 or 5%. The private loans that were that they talked about in the New York Times article, those are always higher interest rates. And
what's 4.5 and 5? Is that federal-backed loans?
Right, for the federal loans.
Okay, what about these private ones, the ones that National Collegiate holds in this trust? I wonder what the rate is and the finance charges are on those.
They're very high. They're exorbitant. A lot of them are 8, 9, 10%. Mm-hmm. And then the costs of collection are added on, often 25% of the total loan balance. So they're often kind of predatory loans.
And is the fault in that on the lender or the college or the student? I mean, talk about the dynamic of that. I'm not familiar with this one college this woman graduated from. Mother of three, graduated from Lehman College in the Bronx. I hope it's a fine accredited school and there's value to that degree. But I do sometimes see people pursuing degrees am borrowing from people that I'm not sure are in their best interests.
Well, you're right. I think there has to be some personal responsibility placed on the student, and the student has to understand that they are signing a contract to pay back a debt and that it's not going anywhere, and there's really no way to get rid of it unless, of course, you have a loan from National Collegiate Trust.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, how does somebody find... Okay, but more to the point, though. So are you angry at these schools or these lenders for... I'm going to say preying on these naive students?
Well, to be honest, I think it's more a problem that parents in schools are not teaching students who are about to go to college what it means to take out a student loan. And so, if you're in the business and you can provide a student with a student loan and they're willing to sign a contract for 8% interest, maybe they think that they'll be making the kind of money in 10 or 15 years that loan won't hurt them financially. So I think that there's got to be a balance between the freedom to contract and also protecting the interests of students who might just not be financially savvy.
Understood. And I'm not financially savvy, but how savvy do you have to be to know if you borrow money, you're going to have to pay it back? And 8 times 100 is... 8% of 100 is 108, right? Or is 8 plus the 100. So now you owe $108 if it's 8%. I mean, that's not complicated math. And the notion that you have to pay it back after you graduate, that will be minus the net of your paycheck, is not a difficult concept to master. So I think this, I don't know much about finance, is kind of hogwash sometimes.
It is sometimes. And I think that it's also because it's at a faraway date in the future, and students just assume that at that point they'll be in a position to pay off the balance.
How do I find out if I'm on the list? Is there a list that I may be on, and lo and behold, they lost my paperwork too?
Well, if you're a student out there and you're getting collection letters from National Collegiate Trust, NCT, or TSI, who is their servicer, or AES, you probably are one of these loans where they lost the chain of title and they can't prove that they own the loan. And
$5 billion in loans.
Yes, and actually they did an audit of their servicer, and a random sample of 400 of the loans found not a single one had the necessary assignment paperwork documenting the chain of ownership.
So now people are listening to us with their fingers crossed going, oh, please be my loan, please be my loan. So is there a database they go to, a website? I mean,
if they have federal loans, there is a database. It's www.nslds.ed.gov. If they have private loans, unfortunately, there is no database containing all of the private loans, but we usually can obtain the information from a credit report or any collection letters that they receive.
You could find out for somebody if they're on the list?
Yes.
But if it's a federal loan, that's probably not applicable in this case, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got some calls for you.
Sure.
The number's 312-981-7200. You can text to that line as well. In our studio, Rae Kaplan deals with these sorts of cases. She's the owner of the Kaplan Law Firm in Chicago. 312-981-7200. You are next. There is a story in the New York Times. You may have seen it elsewhere. That's where I sourced this article. As paperwork goes missing, private student loan debts may be wiped away. Almost half of the loans in the National Collegiate Trust, it says here, National Collegiate is an umbrella named for 15 trusts, 800,000 private student loans totaling $12 billion. More than half of them are in default, or pardon me, more than $5 billion, so almost half of them are in default. But since they can't prove that National Collegiate, actually owns these loans, there have been snafus in bundling these loans up like we used to do old mortgages and transferring it one to another, to another, to another. They don't have a good paper trail. And so if you fight it in court and say, I can't or don't want to pay, or I'm not sure I owe you the money, they probably won't be able to demonstrate that, in fact, they do hold title to that, and the loan goes away. Rae Kaplan is the owner of the Kaplan Law Firm. She deals with these sorts of cases here in Chicago. Just very quickly before we go on with some calls, you were telling me that 501c3s qualify. I was asking you about the fact that if you pay out regularly on a student loan for 10 years, that the loan is forgiven. That's a federal program. The President Obama changed that slightly so that it's 10% of your disposable income. You pay that,
Right.
that may be less than the loan. And if
Yes.
you do that for 10 straight years, 120 consecutive payments, then the loan goes away, the balance of the loan.
Yes, the balance of the loan is forgiven. It's called the public service loan forgiveness option.
But you have to be working in public service.
Yes, and any 501c3 not-for-profit organization would qualify. So even if you're, say, a nurse at a hospital, that's a 501c3, you
If
qualify.
you're the janitor at the hospital.
Yes.
How about if you're the surgeon at the hospital?
Yes.
Okay, so a nurse, if she makes consistent payments on her loan after 10 years, doesn't owe on her loan anymore. The same with the doctor?
Correct. I actually have a couple clients right now that are surgeons.
Tell me what the difference is and what they would have owed versus what they will pay under a program like this. Give me an example.
So with compounding interest, let's say a surgeon has student loans of about $150,000 and you want to put them on it's called an income-based repayment plan. They go for 10 years, 120 payments. With compounding interest, they would actually be paying back about $280,000. However, with the IBR that we can qualify them for, they generally will end up paying about 1/3 of what's owed, and the balance is forgiven.
But the surgeon could afford the loan probably.
Correct. But under
He
the
doesn't
Higher
have to pay.
Education Act, he qualifies. That's right.
What do you think of that?
I think that there's a public policy reason behind it, trying to encourage surgeons and others to enter into public service positions, and it's kind of a reward for doing so.
Okay, I see that if you're working in the mountains with poor people digging wells or repainting houses. If you're driving a Maserati and you're a brain surgeon, I'm not sure that's the sort of, air quotes, service that this was intended for. I'm not asking you to defend it. That's just my snappy response.
Right, it's true. And they are paying back a majority of their loan. It's just that when you calculate the interest over time, technically they are paying
Well, that's the way interest
less,
works.
much less, right?
Yeah. Lots of phone calls for you here. By the way, so I'll give your phone number or web address if people want to reach out to you and find out more about this. But you mentioned a database a minute ago.
Yes.
What was that again?
So if you have federal loans and you're just not sure how much you owe or who your servicer is, you think you're in default, the www.nslds.ed.gov is a national database that contains all federal loans as long as you had taken them out before, say, 1978.
But does this program apply to private lenders that we're talking about?
No, unfortunately, it does not. We have far fewer options with the private loans. So that's why this newest development with National Collegiate Trust, because they do hold so many private loans, is very interesting.
All my phone lines are ringing. We'll go to Justin. You're on WGN. Justin, what did you want to say? Hi.
Hi. I have a quick question. I'm not 100% on this, but I think that when at the end of the term the loan is forgiven, the IRS might consider that income, and you might have an IRS bill there.
Is that true?
Correct?
That's actually not true. So under public service loan forgiveness, if you get the majority of your student loans wiped out, that is not considered to be a taxable event.
We're out of time. Is it grad and undergrad?
Yes.
That doesn't matter?
Correct.
They both apply. I'm just going through some of the questions that people have. And would you call these predatory lenders?
The private loans?
Yeah.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Some of them, sure.
How can people reach out to you if they want to know more?
You can call our office, 312-294-8989, or visit our website, financialrelief.com.
Financialrelief.com. I'm going to ask you to come back in here sometime, Rae. This is amazing
Anytime.
to me. And
Sure.
a little frustrating. Well, could you get the government to just send me some money? Because I paid all of my loans, and my wife and I and my kids paid all of their loans. And I guess...
So you're jealous.
Yeah, lucky... and really, I know what the answer to that is. Lucky us that we had the means to do it, right?
Right,
So I
right.
shouldn't complain about that.